I am really honored to be here, and you kind of spoke for me already, Lisa, but I do have to thank you and the Latham team. There are 3 incredible partners at Latham that I work with very closely, all of them female. Lisa is one of those 3. The other 2 are Linda Insco, and then a third one in Washington, D.C. by the name of Jennifer Archie, who I would call any one of these women in a time of crisis. They've been there, and in fact, Lisa and team have been working on 2 significant IP patent litigation lawsuits for Veritas for the past several years, and before that even in Symantec, and we got an amazing verdict yesterday at the appellate level where the appellate court affirmed a motion for summary judgment in our favor, and I think the initial settlement claim that the IV patent troll had asked was somewhere in the neighborhood of $600 million to now we are going to be asking for our attorney's fees back. So thank you, Lisa, for making me look good with my executive team. So I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of my story. I'm hoping that it will be beneficial. I do believe in relationships. They're so important. I think when I was growing up, one of the things that I was good at was school. And I came from a broken family. My parents had 7 divorces between them. And I was raised in a Mexican household. And frankly, I thought I was Mexican my whole life until I was 30 when I found out I was adopted. And apparently I'm not Mexican. Which I think anyone who looks at me kept telling me that's not possible, but I do speak Spanish fluently. I went to school in Guadalajara for a while, and I went to school in Spain. But I did have a bit of a challenging upbringing. My father had Parkinson's disease, and my parents were divorced, and I always felt responsible for his well-being, and as he aged and got more and more unwell and unable to care for himself, I was in high school and college taking him to doctor's appointments and neurological appointments. And he was a really wonderful, bright man who was a clinical psychologist that contracted Parkinson's in his 30s, so it was really, really early age. And he had to retire really early, and all he got was Social Security disability. And I was just so worried about him. I remember going to high school, and I decided I was just going to graduate in 3 years because I had all the credits that I needed, and I could go to university. And I kind of knew I wanted to be a lawyer, but I didn't have anyone in the family that was a lawyer. I just knew doctors and lawyers make money, and I wasn't that great at science, so I was going to go to law school. And I had one dream of a university that I wanted to go to, and that was Stanford. I actually now live in Palo Alto. And as a junior in high school, I had no guidance counselor. I just got the application, I don't even remember how, and I hand wrote the application using whiteout because I made some mistakes on my essays, and I submitted it. And you know what? I actually did not get in, not surprisingly. So I was really disappointed about that, but I had done well enough in school as a junior that I got tuition scholarships, waivers for all the 3 state universities in Arizona where I grew up, and I ended up staying in my hometown and went to the University of Arizona as an undergrad. And then I went to law school thereafter. And I remember when I was an undergrad, I was always kind of scraping for scholarships here and there to try to figure it out. And you know what? You can figure it out. There's always a way. But the one thing I met is a great guidance counselor when I was at university. He was in the Alumni Foundation. He was kind of raising money for the school, and he really made me believe, he was also Hispanic, that you could just do anything. Like if you put your mind to it and you worked hard enough, you could do anything. Essentially because he said, people are generally lazy and they'll try to get back they'll get by on as little as they possibly can. And I really took that to heart, and I've always been, I would say, a hard worker. I wouldn't say that anything comes necessarily easy to me, but I do believe that you can figure anything out, especially those of you who have gone to law school. I think that's part of going to law school is being able to solve complicated problems. And that is really what makes being a lawyer, I think, really fun. What are the various angles that you could play, and how can you get to the right result? But anyway, I did then go straight to law school from undergrad. and in Tucson, Arizona as well. And I gotta say, my first year was really, really tough because I had just turned 21 or 22 at the time, so I was pretty young, and there were a number of people that this was a second career, and it was incredibly intimidating to be in classrooms where there was a guy that was a PhD and he worked at Dow Chemical, and he wanted to be a patent lawyer. And they had all these great stories to contribute in the classroom, and I just didn't feel I had anything to contribute. So it was really hard for me to feel like, how can I compete on an even keel with these people that are so much smarter than me? And I did work hard, but I did psych myself out. On my first civil procedure exam, I kind of crashed in the middle of it, and my teacher did give me good, enough time, but my whole grade rested on one exam, and I got the worst grade in my life. I didn't fail, but I didn't get the A or B that I normally get. So I was able to finish, which I'm very grateful for, but it was such a huge thing at the time when I was going to law school, and I thought, oh my God, I am never gonna get over that. It will haunt me forever. And I had a boyfriend at the time who was in New York who told me to get my head out of my butt and just to move on. And so I took that advice to heart, and I did, and I ended up writing on to Law Review, and my note ended up getting published. And when I was a 2L, I interviewed to work for Senator John McCain in DC, and I got the externship. So I worked for the senator during the day, which was such an extraordinary experience. And then I went to Georgetown at night because I had gotten a clerkship with a law firm in Los Angeles called Richards, Watson & Gershon. It's a very California-centric law firm, but it's a boutique firm that specialized in incorporating and representing local public entities like cities. And so, I love the firm and I love the people. In fact, I visited them recently, and the same people that I worked with 20 some odd years ago are still there. Like the receptionist is still there. I mean, it's a very close-knit firm. And as a matter of fact, there was one guy I remember in the copy room who was really, really funny. And I remember he decided to stop doing that because he had written a screenplay, and this may be before many of your time, but the next time I saw him after he left the firm, he was receiving an Academy Award for The Usual Suspects. If anyone saw that movie, the real name of the lawyer's name that he took is Kaiser Sume. Look it up, instead of Kaiser Soze. But I loved the firm I was at, Richards, but I was very small, and I always had these grandiose ideas that I wanted to be an international lawyer. What that meant and how to get there, I had absolutely no idea. So I did, because I had done some litigation and advisory work at this small boutique firm, I decided to leverage that and go into litigation at a firm called At.Michelle Zavis at the time. And it was more national in scope. And then in that time, I met my fiance, now husband, and he had an opportunity to move to London. And he said, "You wouldn't want to move to London, would you?" I'm like, "Absolutely." And of course, after I said that, I'm like, who's going to hire me and where will I get a job? So I started looking. I didn't have the likes of Nikki Khan. I mean, so really, it's great to have resources like Practice Pro. And in fact, Nikki, we do have to talk because I am now in a position where I can do so much more than I could even a few years ago. And I would be very happy to talk to anybody or help anybody that I possibly can. But anyway, I ended up getting a job at O'Melveny & Myers in London. And crazy, it was just like my resume happened to land on the managing partner's desk at the right time when somebody was going on maternity leave, and he was willing to take a chance on someone that hadn't done corporate financing before, had done litigation. So I rolled up my sleeves and I learned again, and I started doing corporate financing transactions. And we lived in London for a few years, and then my husband's job brought him back to Silicon Valley. And I stayed with O'Melveny. I worked at on Battery Street for a few years when the firm was there, and then we opened the Silicon Valley office, and so I was with O'Melveny. And then I had my first child. I have 3 now, a daughter who's going to turn 15 next week, and then 2 boys, an 11 and 9-year-old. And I was seeing my daughter less and less, and it was just very cyclical and difficult. And my husband, who'd actually coincidentally been in the storage IT side of the business, he'd always been encouraging me to go in-house. And for whatever reason, I always thought, oh, in-house is really for people that, can't make it in a law firm. That was sort of my jaded idea. I'm like, I don't know if I really want to do that. I think I need to stay in a law firm. But I did enjoy the times at working as a lawyer that I enjoyed the most was when I really got to know the clients I was working with and understand their businesses and the complexity and try to help them solve problems, and they really appreciated it, and it just made me feel really good. So an opportunity at Veritas came up in 2004, and it was for an M&A role, and I took that opportunity. And the day I started was the day that I found out that a company called Symantec was acquiring Veritas. So my first day on the job, I didn't get home until, I don't know, it was like 3 o'clock in the morning, because on my first day, news of the Veritas merger leaked. And so we had to move up the announcement of the merger to my second day on the job. And you couldn't imagine my husband, he was like, what could you possibly be doing? I mean, you just got there, like, you just need to figure out where the bathroom is, maybe sign some insurance papers, get your computer. No, that wasn't my first day, but it was really interesting because through such chaos came such amazing opportunity. Now, don't get me wrong, it wasn't easy at all, but it did create a lot of opportunities, and I took some projects that frankly no one else in the legal department wanted to take. Like, as soon as we merged Veritas and Symantec, there were 300 legal entities between the two companies worldwide, and so we had to merge all those entities together and figure out what the right tax structure was. So within, 2 months of joining Veritas, I was presenting to the combined executive team of Veritas and Symantec, and I was like, wow, this is really daunting, but at the same time, it's really cool to be getting these opportunities. And I, after that, I was doing a number of different M&A transactions, and Lisa mentioned one. I had done one with Huawei Technologies, which is a pretty significant Chinese company. It looks like you know what Huawei is. It took about 3 years from start to finish to get that deal done. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed that deal, and I closed the deal, and it was the first time I'd ever gone to Beijing. And it was beautiful. It was like crystal blue skies, and it was wintertime, I remember, so it was really, really cold. But what I didn't know is all the factories around Beijing had been shut down for 6 months, because it was right before the Olympics in 2008. So I was like, I don't know what people are talking about. It's so pretty. It's clear. The air is clean. But fast forward, when we closed the deal, Symantec got to put in 3 executive positions. Huawei put in 1,000. But Symantec put in 3 positions: the Chief Technology Officer, the Chief Financial Officer, and the General Counsel. And I was starting to look for a General Counsel that obviously could speak Mandarin and understood the culture, and that was what made a lot of sense. But somewhere during the time that I was trying to do the search for the company, the CEO and the Chief Technology Officer of Symantec asked if I would be interested in taking the role. And the role would be based in Chengdu, China, and that is really interior China. If you know anything about China, that's where the panda sanctuary is, that's where they breed panda bears. And I kind of talked to my husband about it, like, would you be interested in going to China? I know we've done a nice stint in London, and that was fun, but this will be really different. And he said, yeah, I think that would be okay. We'll talk about it. But then, interestingly enough, the General Counsel at the time, who I worked really, really well with, he was awesome, I guess decided he was going to hire one of the candidates that I had laid out in front of him, and he did. And I was really disheartened and really sad. I think I probably cried about that because I really wanted that role. And he, and I called him out and I said, well, what happened? Like, I don't understand, like, I understood that the CEO wanted me to do this and the chief technology officer wanted me to do this. Like, well, I thought you'd be my biggest advocate and supporter. Like, what happened? Did I do something? And he said, no, but you don't want to live in China. It's really polluted. You've got young kids. Like, why would you want to go there? And I was so disheartened. I said, but why couldn't I have that decision? Why couldn't you leave that decision with me? It was probably one of the first times that I actually felt like, wow, that I don't know if it might have been unconscious bias, maybe because I was a woman, maybe he assumed that my husband wouldn't be able to go. I actually don't know. I know that I worked well with him, and I have no idea where that came from. But anyway, as things turn out, it was a blessing because I then became pregnant with my third son. And during my maternity leave, I found out from the new General Counsel of Symantec at the time that things had not been working out so well at the joint venture, and would I still be interested in taking the General Counsel role? And of course, this was about 6 weeks after having a baby. But I talked to my husband again, and he said, sure, let's go for it. And so instead of going back to Symantec after my maternity leave, I went to China. But this time it was actually better because I was able to move my family to Hong Kong, and then I would just commute myself into Shenzhen. And it was really nice because the joint venture had settled a little bit, and most of the management were living in Shenzhen anyway. So what I thought was maybe not a great outcome actually turned out to be a much better outcome for me because it just wasn't my time. And I was grateful. I couldn't be happier having the most beautiful youngest little boy, and he's such a blessing, and that might not have happened had I gone the first time. So sometimes you can drive things really, really hard, but sometimes you just have to let things happen at their own time and on their own terms. But moving on, I then moved from China back to the Bay Area with Symantec. I have to say there were a lot of people that discouraged me from doing the joint venture. I talked to recruiters that I knew and trusted, and I talked to people in my company, and some people who are good friends of mine would say, you know what, you won't have a position to come back to. And recruiters said, well, what kind of experience is that going to be? Because it's not really going to be sellable here. But in my heart and in my soul, I just felt like it's such a great life opportunity. I would forever regret not taking it. And the fact that my husband was supportive of it, and my kids were at age 6, 2, and 5 months, it was perfect. So we went, and I have to say, in everything that I've done so far, that was probably one of the most enlightening experiences that I've had. I absolutely love China. I've made some of the most remarkable friends, and I learned so much just about different cultures and different perspectives, and we do see things very differently, but having an understanding that's more than theoretical was just really, really great. And I have been able to leverage that a lot in everything that I do now. But I moved back to Symantec, and I didn't move back in a legal role. The General Counsel had then taken on trade compliance in the corporate team. And it was a large team of about 40 people, and I'd never managed a team that big before. So I thought it was a really good opportunity to gain some management skills and really learn export compliance. And I had some export compliance challenges while I was in China. So I was able to leverage that. And then 6 months into that stint, the General Counsel said, hey, I have another opportunity that I'd really like you to take, and that's to run the legal department for Symantec in Asia. Would you be willing to go back? So we pretty much just unpacked, and my husband and I keep looking at each other because we keep saying, we don't think this expat opportunity is going to come up again, so we really need to take it. And it came up again, and we looked at each other and we said, what do you think? And he said yes, and so we went again for 2 years. So meanwhile, the company continues changing. Symantec acquired Veritas, and then toward the end of I was in 2 years of my stint in Singapore, and the General Counsel said, hey, we're gonna spin out Veritas into a separate public company. What do you think? You can go either way. You can stay in Singapore if that's where you want to stay, or you can go to Veritas. And at that time, a very good friend of mine was going to become the general counsel. I had worked with him before, reported to him before. It's fabulous. And when you go abroad, but you know you want to come back home, those opportunities don't always present themselves. And I thought, hey, maybe this was the right time to come home. And my daughter was starting, and she was in the middle of junior high school and starting high school. So I thought, okay, we'll move back home. But anyway, we moved back home, and I found out that instead of spinning out to a public company, we decided that I don't know if we decided, but a private equity company called Carlyle acquired us. And so that is where I have been ever since. The general counsel, who is still a dear friend of mine, decided last year actually I remember it vividly, I was watching the election results come in with some friends in my house and feeling quite uneasy. And he called me and he said, I just gave my notice and I've recommended that you take my role as general counsel. And I was both horrified and awestricken all at the same time. And I had to interview for the role. I had to meet the board and I had to meet the chairman, and I had some dealings with them already, and also had to meet our primary shareholder, which is Carlyle. But I ended up taking the role, and every opportunity that I've had in-house has been amazing. And it's been a really great experience. And so I'm just really grateful that the opportunity came up. And as you've seen kind of from my story, there are opportunities that are presented all the time. And there's so many successful paths that you can take in life. You never know. You can make different decisions, and I think you can be successful in any one of those decisions that you decide to make. But for me, it's really worked out, I think, really nicely. I have a really wonderful team that I've known for quite some time. Some of them going back to my first days in Veritas back in 2004. It's a company in change. It's really dynamic. I'm the only woman on the executive team right now, so it's great to have a seat at the table, but I have a team that I feel very strongly about, and I feel that it's a place where I can have a voice. And actually, it was funny, there was something that was said to our executive team in an email earlier today, because we're going to be doing we're going to have a program management office to do something for the company for a period of time, and so some internal candidates were recommended. And the person that sent the email said, okay, now don't throw shoes. This is just a short list of people that we came up with to take this role. And I said, well, I already have my nominees in mind. And I said, be careful because I have heels. So really that's my story of how I got to where I am. And I have learned a lot of lessons along the way. But I think two big takeaways that I would leave with each of you is just be grateful. I think there are so many people that want to help, and I think diversity is a two-way street. I absolutely can do more, and I'm really looking forward to partnering and doing more. But I also think it's each and every one of you reaching up and out, because there's many people now more than ever that want to help you up and to help you shine and take those opportunities because they're here. And I think, Nikki, the program that you have put together and some of the discussions that I've had, even before speaking right now, I'm just really delighted that you have these resources, because I didn't have these. I was talking to somebody earlier, like I literally learned from the School of Hard Knocks, and the example I had given is in one early interview, I was interviewing with a firm called Allen Matkins up here, and they put me in a glass conference room, and when they said that they were ready for me to go and interview, I got up, turned around, and got my stuff, and then promptly crashed into the glass and broke my nose. And I didn't know at the time, but obviously there was blood everywhere on my suit. And I went to the bathroom and I tried to clean up, and I'd only flown up for the day, and and they're like, well, do you want to come back another day? I'm like, no, I'm going to interview now. And my head was like throbbing. So you don't have to do that. You know what? You can go another day. It's okay. It's okay. So the two things I had learned is just really being grateful. There are people that want to help you every step of the way. And I'm very religious, and I believe that God puts angels in our path every day. And those angels are in the form of people that really want to help you along. And the second thing is, and I suffer this, but don't be afraid to think big. Like, think big. If you think it, you can do it. I have to say, I never thought I would be a general counsel, and I love my role. I absolutely love it, and the things that give me the greatest pleasure is understanding the business and trying to solve complex business problems. But the other greatest pleasure I have is for my own team, is being able to create opportunities for them to grow professionally. So anyway, thank you for having me. It was a real honor to be here, and happy to answer any questions if anyone has any questions.